Hi, everybody. This week we're going to talk about shooting scripted productions and some of the work that goes into that, some of the back stage, behind the scenes stuff that you're going to have to do to make sure your shoot goes as well and as smoothly as possible. Um, so, your booking your material is going to work from the assumption that you're shooting your scripted drama production with a single camera. You might find yourself in situations in which there are more than one camera shooting simultaneously, but rest assured the basic concepts are all going to be the same, right? So let's think about this. Scripted drama simply means it is a fictional production with actors, a script to follow, locations, etc., as opposed to factual or news, which is by very definition actual events being covered by a news crew, which we've already talked about, right? So scripted drama is also different in that it's often shot out of sequence, meaning the scenes are almost always not shot in the order we see them in the finished edited production. For instance, the last scene in your TV show might be the first scene you actually shoot in your production. When scenes when scenes are shot has everything to do with scheduling and availability and very little to do with narrative continuity. As a result, it's of vital importance that those involved with the production have a clear understanding of how all these pieces are going to fit together when all the shooting is complete. If there's no clear understanding of this, it's quite likely the finished product will be anything but cohesive. So you want to make sure you've got a great plan. Um, as opposed to shooting news, which is often immediate and reactive in nature, shooting scripted or drama or fictional productions offers you more control in every aspect and also requires more people to be involved, which can include the producer, that's the person in charge of the entire production. They may or may not be on the set. The director, the person in charge of the creative vision and interpreting the scripts and the storyboards, choosing the shots, communicating with the actors, etc. And then the camera, the person who works with the director to find the best shots and how to light them, right? May also physically run the camera. The camera person needs to be certain the visual basics have been covered before moving on to the next shot. That's their domain, right? Um, that's their purview. You also have sound, who's ever in charge of how the production sounds and the recording of all the sounds on the set. Like the camera person with video basics, the sound person needs to be certain the audio basics have been covered before moving on to the next shot. Another thing is props and costumes. The person in charge of what the actors wear and what they use while in their scenes. It's very important. Of course, there's makeup. The person in charge of making sure that actors look the way the director wants them to in regards to the scene. This can run the gamut from ensuring a natural look all the way to an intense creative makeup job to simulate injuries, old age, or zombies. Right? There's also a continuity person. This person is super important. They're in charge of making sure the shots and scenes will make sense when edited together later. Because most of the things we're talking about, these scripted fictional drama productions, are shot out of sequence, this can be an especially important job. For instance, if an actor is holding a glass in their right hand for one shot or wearing their ball cap backwards, the continuity person's job is to make sure they're doing the same thing in the next shot, even if that shot is not taken until minutes, days, or even weeks or months later. They need to have notes. They need to know what to reference. So I'm not wearing a different shirt. So I'm not facing the wrong way. So I have the same look. Um, it's very important. Nothing takes a person or a viewer out of a production quicker than some bad continuity. And then there's a shot lister. This person keeps a record of what's been shot and where everyone is in the current shooting by following the script and paying close attention. Their job is to micromanage all that. Of course, there's a location person, the person in charge of finding the places where the shooting is going to take place, whether it's a parking lot, an abandoned strip mall, a suburban neighborhood, sidewalk, clearing in a forest, or any other real location, real place the director wants to use. The locations person is the one who scouts, submits, and confirms it for the production's use. If you're lucky enough to have a shooting space you've created yourself, it's called a set, but most productions at the student level will use locations. They tend to be easier to get, not to mention cheaper. As you can imagine, building a set can be very expensive and time consuming. And of course, we talked about locations earlier in the semester. Rehearsing. Unlike news productions, news shoots, scripted stuff have the opportunity to rehearse before the camera actually rolls. there are a few simple ways to get better performances out of actors and a better shoot out of your crew by just doing some basic rehearsing. You want to rehearse the lines. Actors need to know their lines before your shoot begins. Nothing drags a shoot down faster and discourages more quickly everyone involved than an unprepared actor who simply doesn't know their lines. Make sure you do all you can to ensure your actors have done their part and are ready to go by scheduling rehearsal time before shooting any scene. If you can rehearse it in the actual location, that's even better. Character profiles. Actors, this is what they do. They tend to do better work when they have an idea of who their characters are beyond just the words on the page. By giving them backstories and histories to draw on as performers, you can encourage them by asking them to share those backstories and histories with the director, but not necessarily each other, prior to shooting. It should help to give their performances a more well-rounded and a deeper interpretation. Character relationships are important. Actors also tend to do better work when they have an understanding of who they're interacting with in the scene as opposed to just the other actor saying their lines, right? You can encourage this by having actors rehearse together and share their insights on character relations with the director so he or she can sort of move the actors around on the stage, if you were, sort of like a puppet master, because he or she has the big picture. The purpose of the scene. A good director is not only going to know why the scene is being shot, but why it's in the script and what about it is important to the overall story. This is super valuable information the director needs to be clear on so that she can share this with the actors who often need motivation for a character's actions and dialogue. A director needs to know, again, the big picture, how this is going to fit into the whole. They need to guide the actors to do the same. It's not easy to perform out of sequence. It's not easy to shoot out of sequence, especially when you're aiming to put it all together in a different order. You need to have a clear idea of where it's going and what you want. All the prep and planning we've talked about should help you with that. Actors also need to remember or be told or to know what comes before and after this thing they're shooting. They need to be reminded what has happened before and after the scene that they're actually shooting now so they can match their moods and behavior appropriately. This is super important for this kind of thing because so much is done out of sequence, as we said. It's easy to forget exactly where a scene is in the overall story. An actor could play it one way and then forget that they've just come out of a hair-raising, life-threatening event, and they're not reflecting that at all in their performance. They seem very calm, which throws off the continuity of the entire production. Listening. If you want to be a good director, you need to know that actors need to react to what's being said to them in scenes by other actors, as opposed to just anticipating what's going to happen because they know the lines and action beforehand. Getting actors to listen as opposed to just react, knowing what's going to happen is really tough. It's the heart of acting. Not everybody can do it, but it's something you want to aspire to. You want to achieve realism in the sense that the actors aren't anticipating what's going to happen and seem to have a split-second view into the future, right? That can ruin the feeling of a production. You want to be careful about overlapping when you're recording, overlapping dialogue. You're going to remember that all this needs to be edited together. So only have actors overlap their dialogue when that's exactly what's required by the script. Otherwise, editing can be a real nightmare. If you're not sure if you want some dialogue to overlap, or you want to leave yourself an option, record them separately. You can edit it together easily in the editing process. You cannot unmix it, right? If they're overlapping when you record it, you're stuck. It's almost impossible. I'd say it is impossible to unoverlap, if that's a word, dialogue once it's put together. You want to give good notes. Remember that acting is not easy, and different actors require different styles of direction, because just like in life, the best approach to good communication is not a one-size-fits-all approach. So be sensitive to actors and help them give you what you want, rather than be upset when they aren't delivering the performance you're hoping for. You're most likely going to be dealing with amateur actors as well, especially if you're just starting out, and remember that you're all in it together. You want to block a scene. Blocking a scene just means making sure that everyone knows where, when, and how the actors are going to move during a scene. This is important for both the actors and the crew, is everyone needs to be certain of what they're expected to do both independently and in response to the actions of others. For instance, one of the last things you want is to have a great take happening only to have it messed up because your camera person didn't realize the actor was going to move out of frame, right? Blocking is key to a good shoot and good planning. You have to choose your shots. When you're deciding how to shoot a scene, it's important to remember these basics and to effectively use them whenever possible and appropriate. You want to always remember that it's better to have too much material than not enough. Within reason, of course, you have a schedule to adhere to. But you want to choose your shots. You want to establish the location in the shot. Have you taken shots to establish where the action is, which is most often an extreme wide or a wide shot showing me where the location is, the composition of the room, the composition of the street, where people are, where things are? Have you done that? Have you taken medium shots, which is, waist up? We've talked about these. Do you have enough to use when editing? They're a nice, simple shot that can be used in narrative storytelling as a go-to shot. Sometimes they're called master shots in a way. Close-ups. Have you used them to heighten intensity when appropriate? You've got a character has a big scene. Have you made sure that you shot it in a close-up? Point of view shots. Meaning a point of view of a character, right? Which shots like these help tell your story better. You want to think about all these things, right? Moving shots. If you want the camera to move, make sure there's a good reason to do so and not just because it looks cool. You want it to have purpose in the narrative flow. There's nothing wrong with looking cool, but then a camera shot with no real motivation, with no story motivation, with no narrative visual storytelling motivation simply draws attention to itself. Camera angles. Which angles are you using and to what effect? Again, make sure there's a good reason to use them within the story as opposed to just using them to be different. That will only confuse your viewer, I would say. You want to make sure that all your decisions are pointed in the same direction and the same purpose. And of course, you have to know what that purpose is before you can make those decisions. Depth of field. Are you using depth of field to effectively tell your story and manipulate viewer attention when appropriate? We've talked about depth of field. How much is in focus in your depth of field? Am I doing any rack focus? Am I using depth of field to better tell my story? Matching shot. Matching shot is something you need to consider, again, when you're thinking about the end product. If two characters are having a conversation, let's say, shoot their separate shots in a similar fashion so they match when they're editing. Typically, I don't want to shoot a reverse shot of a conversation with different angles, different points of view, different fields of view. I want them to match. Typically, you may decide not to, but that's again part of your overall vision, and you'd want a reason for that. Do you need to shoot any close action? If you're shooting some sort of action, large or small, especially close up, make sure you also shoot the same action in a wider shot for possible use when editing. So cover anything important. Let's say it's a ticking time bomb and your character is trying to defuse it. Make sure that you shoot as much close and wide action of that as you can because you need it because it's an important part. And you want to make sure that you can cover all that action and ratchet up the tension. Are you adhering to the 180-degree rule? Remember not to cross the line. We discussed about this earlier in the semester, right? A great way to prepare is to use storyboards. They are an effective and powerful way to not only prepare your production team, but to also prepare yourself and generate new ideas and to clarify your vision by literally drawing out what the shots and scenes should look like, how they should be blocked, how the camera should move, etc. There's a link here to a fun video about storyboarding. I'll also have it in Blackboard. When you look at storyboards, they can be very useful when coming up with your shot list. The shot list is exactly what it sounds like. It's a list of shots that you need and or want to be sure that you get during your shooting time, right? Your shooting day. For each shot, you should describe certain things. The size of the shot. Is it wide, this shot? Is it a long shot? Is it a medium shot? Is it close up? What's the angle? Is it a high angle, low angle, eye level? What is it? What's the depth of field? How much is in focus, right? Especially if it's unusual or different in some way, right? Camera moves. Do you want your camera to move at this point? If so, how? Describe it. Lay it out. I have another video link about how to make a shot list. It's one of the most important things you can do before a production, I would say. Maybe the most important, although it's hard to quantify everything. Again, we talked about continuity. You may be shooting a scene in lots of different ways and possibly over a quite long time span. But when it's edited together, the viewer must feel like the whole thing has happened in a matter of minutes or even seconds. There's a couple more videos here I want you to check out, emphasizing how important film continuity is. And there's a silly video about what it looks like when continuity is specifically not observed. But I think it makes its point rather well. So check out your textbook to see more about the importance of continuity with costumes and props and action and weather and location, and start thinking about all these things for your eventual production. Hopefully you'll do someday. You want to make sure that it matches. You'll never be able to go back and match it after the fact. It'd be very difficult. You have to reassemble everybody, get everybody together, go back to the same location, get the same cost. It's just, don't do it. Don't do it right the first time. So shooting for scripted drama or comedies, obviously we're using drama just to mean fiction, dramatized, meaning scripted. Productions is vastly more complicated than shooting for news, and it requires thoughtful and thorough planning in the pre-production phase. The bottom line is that every shot is important, otherwise why do it, right? It deserves attention and planning. Otherwise, I would argue, don't even do it, right? Make sure that you have a clear. There is no quiz this week, so just make sure that you participate in the discussion board for the participation and the assignment grade both. See you on the boards.